All right, welcome to chapter 1 of our ebook. It's an awesome ebook. It's very informative, gives you a lot of great basic foundational information on weight training and physical conditioning. It is written by Dr. Wagner, who is the designer of this course. Awesome guy. So we're going to go down. Okay. So let's first talk about benefits of weight training. Why do we even want to bother weight training? First of all, it increases muscle mass. That should be, one of the most obvious benefits. And while we are increasing muscle mass, generally what happens is we decrease fat tissue. And we'll talk a lot about this, body composition. So you're not necessarily turning fat to muscle, but what happens is, you gain muscle mass, which increases your metabolic rate, then you burn more fat. So you generally have those two things going on at the same time. You also have a decreased risk of heart disease. Studies show again and again that when you work out, strength training, any kind of physical conditioning, you have a decreased risk of heart disease, which is still the #1 killer in the United States. You'll have increased range of motion, which means, the ability to use your joints to their fullest ability, and move them in all the ways that they should be able to move to fully function. You'll have decreased risk of injury. So this is true across the board, but also, and maybe specifically for, sports. When we, and many of us here are kinesiology majors with the idea that we're going to go into the professional realm where we're dealing with athletes, or we are athletes, or we're coaches, we're PE teachers, whatever we're doing. And weight training builds the strength of your muscles, yes, but also your bones, your tendons, your ligaments, and it prepares them to take the force that sport play will, and sport competition will need. So if we work out, we have a decreased risk of injury. In that same vein, it helps us to improve in sports. So for instance, if we are a basketball player, if I'm a basketball player and I really need to work on jumping, then I'm going to work out muscles that will help me jump higher, jump more safely, land more safely, and all of those things, so that I can improve in my sport. And of course, increase self-esteem. We can never overlook this. When we feel strong, we feel confident. When we feel strong, we feel like we look good, our clothes fit well, all of those things, that all leads to and results in increased self-esteem. So, I have this, I tell this story a lot, but, I have clients that come into me, and the first goal that they'll tell me that they have is, oh, I want to lose weight. I want to lose 30 pounds. And so we say, okay, let's design a program that's going to help you do that. And we always incorporate weight training, right? So they start weight training, and, it's been 6 or 8 weeks. Maybe they've lost 10 pounds. Maybe they've lost 12 pounds, 15 pounds. By that point, it almost doesn't matter if they make that 30-pound weight loss goal, because they feel so good about themselves that they say, you know what, never mind about the weight goal. I just want to keep doing what I'm doing. So, increased self-esteem is a big deal. It's a huge part of it. So what is fitness? When we talk about fitness, a lot of people talk about fitness very loosely, but when we talk about it in our class, we're going to talk about it as a combination of these 5 elements: cardiovascular training, cardio being your heart, vascular meaning your veins and arteries. So anything that's going to improve your heart strength and utilize your veins and arteries, anything that gets your heart pumping. Muscle strength, of course, we want to build our muscle strength. Muscle endurance, not just how strong are you, what can you do, it's how long can you keep it up. Flexibility as well. Muscles are not just strong, they also need to be flexible. And that goes back to this whole, range of motion idea. So we'll talk about flexibility and how to stretch appropriately, when to stretch appropriately. We'll learn 3 different types of stretching to increase flexibility. So there's that. And body composition, I was just talking about this. So body composition is the ratio of lean muscle mass to fat mass or adipose tissue mass. So ideally, and for the best health outcomes, we want to have the leanest, lean, we want to tend toward lean with a low adiposity. So let's talk a little bit about the history of weight training. So one of the very first stories we have of structured weight training is this guy, Milo of Croton. And Milo was a shepherd. He had a lot of animals, including cows. So he had a cow that gave birth to a calf, and he went out there and he picked up the calf. Well, the next day he went out there again and picked up the calf again. Well, every day he went out and picked up this calf. Well, in the meantime, what is happening to this gigantic mammal who's drinking milk? It is growing, as mammals do when they drink milk. So this calf every day was a few grams, a few pounds, even heavier. And Milo went out there every day and picked the calf up. So Milo was utilizing the principle of progressive overload, which we'll talk a lot about in this class. And that's the key to gaining strength in your muscles. You overload them just a little bit more, and they will continue to rise to the challenge and grow stronger. And that's what happened to Milo. We have historical accounts of fitness testing being done way back thousands of years ago in the Chu dynasty in China, within the Roman Empire and their military, all over Europe, including Greece. Specifically, we have a lot of evidence, outside of Greece, Sparta, just outside of Greece. But Sparta was they really, really heavily pushed physical fitness and health. India, same thing. The Indian military way back thousands of years ago had certain physical fitness tests that their soldiers had to pass. And we kind of end in Sweden here, because Sweden is actually, very, very far north, and they're very cold and snowy. And so they actually figured out some really awesome ways to stay fit even indoors. Up there, they actually do a lot of outdoor stuff too, skiing and cross-country skiing and things like that. But they also came up with some great ideas with calisthenics and indoor gyms and things like that. So we'll talk now about 20th century, really the 19th and 20th century, because at the end of the 19th century, this guy Xander brought his exercise. He had designed these exercise machines that could be used indoors to build strength and maintain physical fitness. And he brought these from Europe, I think from Sweden, and brought them to Philadelphia in 1876. And what happens when ideas are brought to America? We put a lot of money behind them, make them better, and make a lot of money from them. And that's exactly what happened. Is they were improved by adding weights to the bars on the exercise machine, so you could customize how much weight you were lifting at any one time. And that is when weight training really, really began to build in popularity in the United States. Here's a little timeline. It brings you back to 1915. So that's just about 30 years after Xander brought his machines to Philadelphia. Charles Atlas, which was not his real name, but he was from an Italian immigrant family, and he actually came up with the idea of dynamic tension. So, pulling tension and actually moving while you're doing it. He's considered the father of fitness. Bill Pearl came along in the 40s and 50s. He's the first Mr. Universe. And Jack LaLanne was a huge health and fitness guru for a lot of years. Jack LaLanne of the Magic Juicer and stuff like that. But he actually, before that, invented the Smith machine, which is a really, really great upright lifting machine. So if you want to do squats and not need a spotter, the Smith machine is your built-in spotter. We do have a Smith machine at the rec center. We don't have one in our muscle lab right now. He is considered the godfather of fitness, Jack LaLanne is. In the 1950s, we had Joe Weider. Joe Weider created the Mr. Olympia competition, and we'll see him in some pictures here in a minute because he's got some really famous clientele. And then Arthur Jones in the 1970s invented the Nautilus machine, which we will also take a look at. And Arthur Jones is famous for pioneering high-intensity interval training as well. So here's a picture of Charles Atlas. And if you read the words down here, it says he is the world's most perfectly developed man, which is interesting because, I mean, he looks great. I'm certainly not going to, complain about the way he looks. He's got good muscle tone. His skin looks very healthy, all of that stuff. Now, in the early 1900s, maybe he was considered the world's most perfectly developed man. But let's advance this a little bit and you can see. So here's Bill Pearl. Bill Pearl comes along a few years later, and you can tell he's got much bigger legs than Charles Atlas, right? Charles Atlas looks like maybe he was doing some great upper body work, but not as much leg day. And here's Bill Pearl, much more leg definition, much larger muscles. Even his arms, his chest are bigger. And this is that beautiful, Mr. Universe pose. So first Mr. Universe right there. So advancing just a few more years, we've got Joe Weider. So Joe Weider in this picture to the left, he looks a lot like that picture of Charles Atlas. But if you'll look over here to the right, that's Joe Weider behind Arnold Schwarzenegger, who he actually trained Arnold Schwarzenegger for the Mr. Olympia competition. And you can tell Arnold, and this isn't even Arnold at his biggest. I mean, he was so gigantic, at his peak, but you can tell, look at his arms. His arms are freaking huge. They're gigantic. He's got a huge chest, a lot of definition in his abdominal region and all over his arms. And this is not a great picture. It doesn't include his lower body. Maybe I need to find a different one, but. And here's Arthur Jones. So I love this poster because it was an advertisement in a magazine, and it says, "What do you do for exercise?" He says, "I lift weights." And he actually, like I said, he invented the Nautilus machine, but he invented and came up with the idea of high intensity interval training, which now studies have continued to show, 20, 30 minutes of high intensity interval training is similarly effective to, about 60 minutes of steady state cardiovascular cardiorespiratory exercise. So a lot of people prefer that, and actually you get a lot more muscle engagement through high intensity interval training, especially with weights. So he says, "I lift weights faster for cardio." And this is a picture of him on his Nautilus machine. And you can't really see the actual machine, but you can tell he's got some great muscle definition. So here's the Nautilus machine. The cam is really the important thing about this. It's a kidney-shaped cam, and you can tell the wire, the part that holds the weight goes over, the tensioner goes over here. And so as it goes, the actual pivot point moves so that there's increased force in certain parts of the lift. And when you think about, this is a simple idea, a simple biceps flex or a biceps curl. And as you're lifting that weight, when you're in the bottom part of your range of motion, you don't have a lot of force. When you are in the top part of your curl, you don't have a lot of force, right? Just because you don't have a lot of muscle to engage there. But when you're in the middle, you have a lot of force. So this cam actually reduces resistance at the beginning and end, and increases resistance in the middle. So that actually mimics the body's natural strength curve. So this is designed to be kind of the ideal way to lift weights. So in the 1980s, we have females finally joining the movement really in force. They had been, but it had been kind of on the down low, right? They didn't want a lot of talk about them being involved in it. But you got to see a lot, there were a lot of sports clubs, health clubs that were open in the 80s, that were co-ed. So men and women were welcome there, and they all worked out in those together. So Rachel McLish is the first Miss Olympia. Here she is. She's beautiful. She's got really well-defined muscles. And some years for Olympia, she would still be a good contender in bikini. But now they have several divisions. And and I know, like, for instance, this year 2025, the bikini ideal is much more toned than this, but yeah, she looks great. Rachel McLish held Miss Olympia for 2 years. She was the first and second Miss Olympia. The third Miss Olympia is Carla Dunlap right here, and you can tell she's got a beautiful back. Really lovely. So anyway, that's when females joined the movement. But this all comes down to this whole class. We're going to talk a lot about what fitness means to you specifically. So balance, building your balance, your core strength, core stability, becoming more agile and flexible. All of that translates into real world needs, like not falling, having good mobility, living longer, and being in less pain in general while you're alive. And all of that leads to a better quality of life. So, and more than that, if you have greater goals than just kind of maintaining your fitness, maybe you want to run a marathon, maybe you want to be, in some CrossFit X Games or something. Maybe you want to be a like an Ironman triathlete. Whatever it is, you have goals, and we can definitely help you begin to learn how to meet those goals in this class. And that's what this class is all about. All right, so that covers chapter 1. Yeah, there's no, yeah, I guess that's it. I was gonna go to, no, the introduction. Yeah, no, so we'll, yeah, this is it. And I'll do chapter 1 next. Okay, thanks.